Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rav Eliezer Melamed. We are now continuing our study in Hilchot Pesach as we get closer and closer to the Chag, so we'll move this week into some of the more practical aspects of cleaning for Pesach, particularly as it applies to the kitchen. We will cover as much as we can this week, and next week, God willing, we'll talk about some aspects of the Seder. So in chapter 11, in Perek Yud Aleph, Rav Melamed has an entire chapter dealing with various items in the kitchen. And of course, if one is not sure, one should certainly contact me, contact your local Orthodox rabbi, and he will be able to answer any of the questions that you may have. So we begin first with the countertops, shayish. Shayish is a term that's used for a type of stone or marble, but it's a generic term for countertops. Rov tashmisha shel hashayish betzonen. Af lefa'amim manichen alav ma'achale chametz chamim, ulefa'amim manichen alav sirim rosachim sheharidu meha'esh. Our kitchen countertops generally are used for cold items, but sometimes we put hot items on there, either from a boiling pot or from the stove, and we put them on the counter. And what we're worried about, v'im galash mehem rotev, and if some of the liquid spills onto the countertops, haresha harotev nivla b'shayish bedrarga shel kli rishon she'eno al ha'esh. And if some of the liquid, or the sauce, whatever is being cooked, spills onto the countertop, and then there's a level of absorption, what's called an kli rishon, from a first utensil, removed from the flame. Again, this is a technical kashrus term, but it's something we need to be concerned about, that your countertops may have absorbed some of the chametz items that are in the liquid. So kedei lahachshiro tzorach tchila lenakoso hetev, uv'miyuchad lesim lev lacharitzim shelo yisharu behem she'arios machal. So in order to clean it, in order to kasher it, so first thing we have to do is we have to make sure that we clean it very, very well, particularly paying attention to the nooks and the crannies, maybe the crevices that are in the countertop, because again, every stone is cut differently, and you'll find that it's not completely smooth depending on what type of material that you have, and you want to make sure that there's no actual chametz remnants, residue in those areas. Really, ideally, the way we should kasher it is we should pour boiling water over and by also using a boiling hot stone and a piece of metal on them. Because by doing so, it brings the water to a boil, and then we have a level of kashering for kli rishon, which is removed from the flame. Again, this is a very technical term. He says we have a problem, though, is that it's hard to bring metal to such a high level of heat, let's say in your private home. We're not talking about an industrial kitchen here. And also we're worried about damaging the countertop. So therefore, and this is the accepted practice, as we will see, is that we just pour boiling water over the countertop. So we have to make sure that before we kasher for Pesach, that from the time that chametz was last used on the countertop, at least a 24-hour period has passed. So you should clean it, wait 24 hours, and then kasher it. And only after the kashering, the cleaning, and the 24 hours has passed can then you use chametz on the countertops. V'chein efshar b'makom ha'ira litzapos kol hashayish b'sha'avanit o b'niar kesef ava k'dei lachtzos bein hashayish l'klei ha'pesach. If one also wants, instead of pouring hot water, if this is not something, again, depending on the setup of your kitchen, depending on what's underneath the countertop, sometimes hot water is not the ideal item to be pouring because of the cabinetry, what's underneath, whatever it might be. So then if that's the case, you can cover the countertops with something. They have a certain type of cloth or a linoleum or some sort of thick foil. Again, whatever people might use. Some people will use plexiglass. Whatever could be used to separate between the countertop and your chametz items, that's certainly acceptable as well. He says some people who are very strict, and this tends to be the case with Pesach, we're very strict, they will not only use the boiling water method, but cover the countertops as well, again with some sort of liner or thick paper, thick foil. Shayish ragish if you have a certain type of countertop which is very fragile, if you have a type of countertop which you would never put a boiling pot on it, so no hot chametz is ever on there, then just simply cleaning it and pouring a little bit of hot water on the surface would suffice, because we're not worried about kashering something from a kli rishon. Again, because it depends on how much of the, we didn't say non-kosher, but what we really mean is chametz items. However that came on, that's how it comes off. So if it was boiling hot, then we need to be more careful about cleaning it. If, however, you would never put boiling hot chametz, all you need to do is clean it and then merely put hot water on it. And he brings this interesting interpretation that if you have a marble countertop, some people put some sort of alcohol on it. He says, however, by using an alcohol substance, it's actually not as strong. It's not as strong in the kashering sense as just using hot water. And therefore you should use hot water. And if you use some sort of steam cleaner, it's just as effective as using boiling water. However, if it's hagala and a kli rishon, as we discussed earlier, then this is not enough. You'd have to use actual boiling water and perhaps the other methods. We'll just go into Beis quickly when he discusses the sink. Kichlal, din hakir domer din hashayish. So the rule of the sink is very similar to the rule of the countertop. On one hand, it's perhaps more lenient, because on the one hand, we use soap. Whenever we have items in the sink, there's detergent, and detergent which actually detracts or it takes away from the taste of the food. And again, this is a technical kashrus term of pigima. On the other side, sometimes a sink, particularly, he mentions here if it's a porcelain sink. Now, again, if we have a stainless steel sink, you're going to be far better off, as we'll see. But if you have a porcelain sink, it could actually be more machmir, more stringent. Because according to many, if you have a porcelain sink, it is not kasherable, so to speak. So Lamasis, he says, practically speaking, what should we do? Yeshnam shnei minhagim. There are two customs. Hamakilim menakim hetev esakior. Those who are lenient will clean the sink very well. Uma'arim alav al kol chakav mayim roschim. And then they will cover the entire surface with boiling water. And by the way, I would add this includes the faucets and the spigot. Kodem sheye'areh mayim al akir v'ashayish yesh liyav sham kedei she'amayim haroschim yigu behem yashirutz. However, before we pour boiling water on the sink or on a countertop, we have to make sure that it's actually dry, so that when the boiling water touches it, it's not touching other liquid, it's touching a dry surface. Therefore, v'lachein gam tzarech la'aros tchila al hakior. We have to first pour water on the sink, v'achar kach al hashayish, and then on the countertop, u'lahaschil mahamakamos hasmuchim l'kior misham l'hamshich l'rchokim. And we start with the areas that are closest to the sink, and then we move further away. Those who are very strict, they will put a plastic insert in the sink, or perhaps line the sink with aluminum foil to separate between the walls of the sink, which may have chametz in it, and anything that's Pesach. And also careful not to use boiling water in the sink during Pesach. Again, this is generally not our practice. If you have a stainless steel sink similar to the countertops, the recommendation is again, clean it well, not use it for 24 hours, and then we do what's called iroi. We pour the boiling water on the entire surface, and you should be good to go. Again, clean, wait, pour, and you'll have a very kosher Pesach. So I hope this is helpful to you. We will see you all here next time, God willing. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call. These are complicated halachos, but they're not hard to follow. Everyone, we'll see you here next time. Have a great day.